This is StewardShift, a show that gives you the tools you need to get the most of your best resources. Your money, your mind, your body, your time.
Welcome back to the StewardShift show. I'm so excited because of our next guest. Man, if you didn't know, we are all of us are stewards of the next generation. If you happen to have kids and you're a parent, then your next generation would be your children, and we are stewards over our children. But for all of us, whether you're a parent or not, we have been commissioned to take care of the next generation and make sure that we're doing the best that we can and making sure that they have the knowledge that we have as well. So our next guest has dedicated his whole life to training the next generation, and he has some new initiatives as well that he's going to share with us. But this is Courtney Hale, who is the chief hope dealer of Super Money University and the creator of Investing Uncomplicated. Courtney, welcome to the StewardShift show.
Man, I'm happy to be here. Very grateful for you giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do.
Dude, when I first met you, you had completed this curriculum, Super Money Kids. Now it's grown to Super Money University. I'm excited to hear more about that. But I just need to hear your why. What led you to create content and products specifically for children at first?
I used to work in the financial services industry, and I would come across a lot of people who had a variety of different paths and stories around money. And at that point, as a professional, as a 20-something-year-old professional, I realized that I was in an environment that was far different than how I grew up. From North Nashville. And at the time, I spent the majority of my time in two of the poorest zip codes in Nashville. When I was with my grandmother, we literally lived on a street that at one end was almost like an outlet of dope houses, trap houses, whatever you call them, where you from. At the other end of the street, we had a guy that bootlegged alcohol. And so that attracted a certain crowd, as you can imagine. And financial literacy, it became a metaphorical exit out of my neighborhood. And as I would reconcile my childhood to my adult life and how different the people were, I started to ask myself questions about how come the people who were from my neighborhood don't live the same lives of the people that I was around professionally. And the answer was exposure and financial education. And so inspired by a Frederick Douglass quote, it says that it's much easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. I decided to start building financial education content specifically targeting youth. And that became like my entryway into youth financial literacy.
Dude, I love that Frederick Douglass quote. That's just amazing. And it makes so much sense. I think I heard a quote that said once that it's easier to bend a twig than it is a tree. And I think we're saying the exact same thing here. And I love it. What are you noticing about kids who receive financial literacy and kids who don't? Like, what are some of the differences here? Are there drastic differences? Are there just minor differences? What are you noticing in that space?
No, man, they're drastic differences. And I'll start with just the interest in the topic. All right. So the students who know the financial literacy is even important for their trajectory in life, there's an ambition for knowledge, not just about money, but just about career success. All right. Versus students where financial literacy isn't even on their radar. They're still even having some connections between what they do in school and what happens in real life. So just from the point of whether or not a kid is interested in money, there's a completely different level in terms of the exposure. Now, when you start talking about what kids are able to do with money, it's completely different as well, because, information is far more prevalent to our younger generation than it's ever been before. So these kids are learning through TikTok, YouTube, and you name the social media platform, and the information is quick. So whereas 15 years ago, it may have taken us a semester to learn a concept, kids are learning that in a couple hours through a series of TikToks and YouTube videos. So a kid can be in high school literally trading stocks, and other students, they're still trying to figure out, maybe how to get a job. So it is a drastic difference in terms of the kids that understand and get it and those that don't.
Is it ever too early to start? Like, is it ever like, yo, you're 6 months old? Obviously, I'm being extreme here. When is a good age to start? Let me ask that.
I say is if a kid is old enough to learn to sing Baby Shark, they're old enough to learn about money. And so normally that's about 3 or 4 years old typically. And there's data that supports that too. There's data that says that a kid can show the behaviors that are necessary to be what we would call financial literate as young as 7.
I'm thinking through like my own life, and I'm wondering how things would be for me right now if I was financially literate at 7 years old. My mind is blown because I just can't even imagine that, man. But like, imagine a generation of people who started off that early. I'm in love with that idea, man.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be as complex as I think we make it sometimes. It's human nature to overthink things sometimes, and I think sometimes parents or teachers even think that, okay, I have to be teaching my kid to understand compound interest at 7, and it's not necessarily that, right? It's understanding that if I can wait on something now, I can get more later. And you don't even have to use that in the context of money. There was one of those viral sensations earlier this year, maybe even last year, where a parent would set a gummy bear on a counter and say, hey, I'm going to sit this gummy bear right here. I'm going to go back. And if you don't touch this gummy, I'll bring you 3 back or 4 back or whatever. And the parents, of course, would secretly record the kid. And some of the kids would eat the one gummy because they wanted that instant gratification. Other kids would wait and until they got the additional gummies. And so that's a financial thing. There's no money in that scenario at all. There's no definitions, no terms, no spreadsheets, right? But that's a financial habit that you could teach kids early.
And what I'm hearing is this is mindset. You're starting with mindset, and that mindset, or a huge part of it, is let's wait for something now, or kind of put it off until we can get something better later. That's just definitely a mindset. So you're saying that you start there, not even using financial terms, just with that mindset of waiting for something greater later.
Exactly. Just starting with that mindset, with those behaviors. And then, once you see that grasp it, or even at the same time, one of our programs is Super Money Kids, and we have the little Super Money Bank that has the 3 parts. I know you've bought several of those, the save, spend, and share. And those are very easy concepts to understand and to explain at about the same age. And so right there, you've probably given a kid a semester's worth of financial education doing those 2 things.
Man, let me tell you something. I gave a couple of those away at church, and people were like super excited. Dude, my own kids use your Super Money Bank, man. And so it's helped us, my wife and I, to instill habits in them, like literally payday. They get paid every other week, and they do their chores around the home. They don't get paid for every single thing, but they know what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to get at the end of those couple weeks. And we divvy it out at the end of those couple weeks. And I just want to say thank you for helping my generations coming after me to do better with their money. I wish I had something like that growing up, man. But my kids have access to that. I'm like deeply grateful for the product that you created.
Man, I love to hear it. I love to see kids engage with it. And, again, it's relatable. It's colorful. it's all the things. And again, I always try to tell parents and teachers, look, you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to spend a lot of time. Simplicity works, and just a little bit at a time. And I think as I talk about some of the disciplines of teaching financial education, those are also some of the principles we want kids to learn. Just do a little bit at a time consistently, and you'll be surprised at the outcome. And that applies with our money as well.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned that it can sometimes be a struggle to pass on some positive financial habits to our generations following us. Why is that? And understanding that families inherently pass certain things on to their children. It's just, you don't even have to try to do that. But what is it about financial literacy specifically that makes it so hard for some cultures to pass that on?
It's a few different things. Number one, we are an overwhelmingly private society, and we don't like to share our losses. We're cool with sharing our wins, but when we lose, we don't want nobody to know about that. And in the Black community especially, most of what's happened with our money has been about losses, and so we don't share it. The other thing is a pride factor. It is even internally with our own families. If we've done something incorrectly, we want to maintain a certain image with those that are closest to us. And so we protect that. And the other reason is there's this feeling that if I don't know something, I don't have any business teaching somebody else. And it's if I wasn't taught how to build up a credit score, well, then how can I teach somebody else? I'm not qualified to do that. And the opposite is true for all of those examples. The fact is, we are more likely to listen and remember somebody's story when they're telling us something from pain. If somebody says, hey, let me tell you about this time I blew $5,000 Christmas shopping or holiday shopping. Let me tell you about the time where I got this credit card for a t-shirt. Well, that was a crazy situation. Let me tell you about the time I bought this car that was a lemon. Like, we remember those stories way more than we remember somebody's wins. And taking our pride out of the situation and saying, hey, I didn't do this right, but I want you to be better than me. Our kids connect to that because they're used to the parent being so strong, so knowledgeable, right about everything. And so the moment a parent is saying, hey, I didn't always understand this. As a matter of fact, I was terrible at it. And I want you to learn from that. Our kids, they perk up, they listen because they want to know about this one thing that the adults in my life, they didn't do right. And so we have to use those to our advantage.
This is just like exciting, man. And I think our generations, like for anyone who's listening or watching, you can't help but catch this. Like, your generations are going to be like super blessed just from listening to this and putting into practice the things that Courtney has been putting out in the atmosphere. And he's been doing this for several years. But Courtney, you have this new initiative now. You started off just teaching kids or primarily teaching kids about money with Super Money Kids. Now you have Super Money University. Tell me about this new passion that you have for teaching adults as well. And you've been doing some stuff with the stock market and helping people to understand investing. What's going on here?
It's been really interesting, right? Because I started my career as a wealth manager working with adults and then decided to do financial education, teaching kids. And what we're seeing more and more frequently, even when we go into the schools, because the majority of our business, I mean, literally probably 98% of our business is within schools. And so when we pitch our programs, now we are having more and more schools asking if we do anything for the parents. And so we've started to be a little bit more strategic with how we design partnering programming that's youth and adults together. At the same time, we were designing new programming with kids as they got older. So We started out with the elementary content, and then those kids were going to middle school, and we wanted programming to grow with the students. And so now the majority of our programming that's in school is actually at the high school level. And we had a unique opportunity to work with some universities around financial literacy. And so it's like the Super Money Kid brand was it, when you see it, it seems to speak purely to younger kids. And I realized it when we were at a conference, it was an education conference, and we had the big background and we had the bank set up, and it looked really, really, really good. And there wasn't a lot of people stopping at my table. And so, I'm really proactive, right? Like I'm gonna go after it. I'm curious, and so instead of waiting for people to stop by my booth, I would approach people like, "Hey, I want to ask you some questions about financial literacy." And in the conversation, oftentimes people would say, "Hey, I thought you only worked with elementary age students." And so we've gotten to the point now where we do more work with the older students than the younger students. We're doing, more of the work with colleges and universities. So it made sense for us to rebrand to Super Money University to capture the wider demographic of people that we were working with. And then on the adult side, you alluded to our work that we're doing to help people understand the stock market. There are a couple reasons why we started to do that. And honestly, some of the feedback actually came from parents. And they said that you do such a good job breaking down these financial concepts. I wish you did more for adults. Thinking about the stock market, and I truly believe the most accessible way for adults to build wealth is through the stock market. And let me tell you why I say that. First reason is because of the amount of money that it takes to get started. You can start investing in the stock market with, $5, $10. You can, whether that's through fractional shares or doing dollar cost averaging, anybody can get started in the stock market. And if you do it consistently for a long period of time, the market has proven that you will increase your net worth. The only piece that's missing is the education for how to understand it. So now, if we compare investing in the stock market with other things that we normally say to build wealth, like real estate or entrepreneurship. First, with entrepreneurship, everybody's not meant to be an entrepreneur. Everybody doesn't have the skill, the discipline, the marketing, a lot of the things that's necessary to do that. And depending on the business, it could be a significant capital investment as well. That's also a barrier. When you start talking about real estate, the financial barrier to entry in itself is enough to exclude 95% of the population. Even if you live in a city where real estate is still fairly affordable, and by affordable, I mean you can buy a house for $100,000. As an investor, you have to come up with 20% of that. That's $20,000. $20,000.
You're not finding a $100,000 house nowhere nowadays, so
there are cities where you can, but you may not live in one of those cities. And if you're new to real estate, you don't want to buy a piece of real estate in a city that you don't live in. There's just some risk involved with that. And so there's also some information barriers and some other things. But if you compare it to being an entrepreneur, real estate, investing in the stock market is the most accessible way to build wealth. And there are a lot of people that don't understand it. And because we had a background in making financial concepts seem easy, I felt like, hey, let's give people a way to get involved in the stock market, breaking it down in a way only we can do.
In the line of work that we do, at least for myself, I get this question all the time about, hey, Troy, how do I get started? There are a lot of like fears and whatnot about getting started. So for those of our listeners and those who are viewing who have never invested in the stock market, Courtney, I just need you to give us a real quick example. Let's say I put $100 a month into the stock market starting today, and going on every single month for the next 10 years, what can I expect for that to grow into 10 years from now?
So the stock market, I think over the lifespan had, if you just look at some of the indexes in itself, I mean, you can be really comfortable over the long term. Now, not to say this year, but the stock market typically returns 10 to 12% annually. Now, there are years where the stock market actually loses value, but it normally comes back exponentially stronger than it has when it's declined. But the important thing is what you said is to be consistently investing in the stock market for long periods of time. If you do it over long periods of time, you will recognize the growth in your investments. A lot of people ask, well, okay, well, I have $100 a month, and it may not be $100 a month, maybe $25 a month to invest. I can come up with that. Well, what do I invest it in? There are what's called index traded funds, which are basically a basket of some of the top performing stocks on the stock market. You put your money into some of those, they're very, very low fees, and you just do it consistently over long periods of time. That's one way. Another way, which I actually think is a much more fun and engaging way, is to look at how you're spending your money. Where do you shop? What are you streaming? And actually, this is the one that I think has a lot of value that people don't even think about. When you stream on your devices, what are you watching? There are things like Netflix. I'm a sports fan. I watch a lot of ESPN. ESPN is owned by Disney. Maybe you have a subscription to Amazon Prime, publicly traded company. That's a great place to start and to invest in some of those individual stocks just based on what you stream or where you spend your money.
Do you suggest mutual funds at all, or just single stock?
No, I think that the index funds are a great way to get started. There's much less risk with the mutual funds, and a mutual fund index fund. An index fund is a mutual fund, and so those have a lot less risk. They're baskets of several individual stocks, and consistently over time, even if you just do some of the ones that follow the S&P, those are going to do well. The thing is, and let's be perfectly honest, people really do look for some excitement in what they do with their money, especially if they're investing in the stock market for the first time. And I try to get people to understand is like investing really shouldn't be an exciting thing. It's actually consistent and boring over time. That's just what it is. It's not a real sexy thing. But if you did want to do something that was a little bit more exciting than just following some of the indexes or investing in the mutual funds, you can do the individual stocks. And then you can also buy fractional shares. That's another way. But investing in the individual stocks is also a pathway if you ever wanted to get more actively invested in the stock market, day trading or trading options or something like that. But you definitely want to get the right training and practice before you get there.
Yeah, I tell people every now and then, if investing is like exciting for you, if there's a lot going on, you're probably not doing this well, man. It's a very boring thing, especially when you first start out, because your gains tend to be pretty fractional. It's not a whole lot of crazy gains, but once you start building that thing up and you've been doing it for years, man, the gains start getting like out of this world, man, because of the power of compounded interest, as you already know. But yeah, for all of our viewers, for anyone tuning in, it's okay to be boring, at least for investing. Let it be boring, but yeah, just keep doing it consistently, as Courtney is saying. What would you say to the person, and we're kind of rounding this out now, what would you say to the person who just hasn't started investing because of fear? What are you saying to them?
Yeah, I think anything we do new in life it's going to come with its level of fear. You're going to be concerned, You're going to wonder if you know enough, if you have enough money. You're going to be afraid that you're going to lose your investment, right? That's just a part. Like, we're going to be humans. But it's important to be courageous, because being courageous, it isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward with the fear. And if you're new to building wealth, you're going to have to break through that hurdle, and you have to stay focused on what your ultimate objective is. And that objective for most of us is to build generational wealth, so that our kids have something that they can use to invest in themselves and in their personal interests, and to invest in their creativity and their innovative minds. That's what we want. And I think for most of us, that's stronger than the fear that we have to get started. Get started with education. If you educate yourself, you find the resources you need to take that very first step. Find yourself a community to support you, to encourage you. You can get through it. You can fight through the fear.
Because this is StewardShift, our audience knows that we end things with a bottom line, and we're going to get to some shifts here, some small shifts and super shifts that people can make. But is there a scripture that you could put on this, or a story from the Bible, just to help emphasize what you're saying to us here?
All right, so Troy, this is the part where you're going to have to help me fill in some of these blanks, okay?
I got you. No problem.
I don't do well with the documentation, but I know the stories. All right, so there's one particular story in the Bible where there were three brothers, I believe, that were given talents. And two of the brothers went and they did something with the talents. And there was one of the brothers was like, I'm a hold mine. And I think he buried it, if I'm not mistaken. And what happens in that story is that the father is disappointed with the brother that buried his, because when it's buried, it can't grow and it can't multiply. And so thinking about biblically a story that inspires us to do what we were just talking about, which is overcome the fear, is definitely the will of God for us to take what we have and to go and multiply it.
I love it. Love it. There are no gaps that need to be filled in here, man. You're preaching truth, man.
All right.
All right. So our audience knows, you heard it straight from Courtney's mouth. Don't be the one that buried your treasure. The other two, they grew what they had. This is awesome. All right, yo, give us a bottom line, man. Like, if people don't do what you're suggesting, how much could they be wasting just by waiting? What's the opportunity cost here? Like, what are we saying here? What's the bottom line?
Yeah, we're all investors. And if you're waiting to start investing, you are digging yourself into a financial hole that literally you could never get out from. And it's not just you, it's your family as well. There's so many things happening in our economy right now, from corporations buying all of the residential property.
It is crazy. Yeah, it's wild.
We are transitioning in our country, transitioning to a society where there are no homeowners. And if you're not putting yourself in a position to do something to grow your wealth, to be able to own something, it could create a pretty frightening future.
All right, so two more things. We'll talk about shifts here. Give us a small shift. Like, what can someone do to nudge their kids towards financial literacy? Let's start right there. Like, give us something small. What can people do?
Yeah, give your kid one way to make money every week. And it doesn't need to be like making your bed. We're not giving anybody any money for doing stuff they're supposed to be doing already.
All right, so give us that's a small shift. Give us a super shift. Like, what can adults do? So that was for kids. What can adults do to get started with investing in the stock market today? Like, give us one tool. And for some people, this is a huge step. So give us that super shift that someone can do to get started in investing today.
Make a list of everywhere that you spend money this weekend. This weekend, carry a notepad or make the notes in your phone, everywhere that you spend money. And then At the end of the weekend, look up how many of those companies are publicly traded. All of those companies that are publicly traded could be your first investment.
All right, y'all, you heard it straight from Courtney's mouth. I was going to say the chief hope dealer of Super Money Kids. He is the chief hope dealer of Super Money University. And he's coming out and by the time we publish this, he's going to be the creator of Investing Uncomplicated. Courtney, thank you so much for being our guest. Thanks for putting us on game. Thank you for helping us just to understand the shifts that we can make in being the best stewards of what God has given us as we possibly can. Man, blessings to you and your family.
Man, appreciate you again. Thanks for everything that you do to pour in to our community.